Former Governor Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas, Fox News contributor. Governor, good morning to you. I want to show you the New York Post cover if you haven't seen it yet today. It reads simply, "You're grounded." Are they playing checkers or are they playing chess?
They're playing hardball, Bill, and that's the game that Nancy Pelosi started when she took the unprecedented step of saying, don't come over to the House for the State of the Union because it may not be safe, even though she never checked with anybody to see whether there was a problem with security. So when you start that game, you better understand that Donald Trump is always going to play on the same level of field. He's just going to play as rough as anybody else plays. And anyone who didn't get that during the presidential process and watch him excoriate 16 candidates, including me, or watch him take down Hillary Clinton, why don't people understand this? He is not a guy that runs over to the corner and bites his lip and puts a tear in his eye. He's going to come out swinging. And I thought it was the appropriate response. I thought it was not only appropriate, and I thought it was very revealing that they were going to go on this 7-day junket right in the middle of a shutdown, which shows that they really don't care about 800,000 government workers. They care about themselves, and they care about stopping Trump. But it was also very, very funny.
Well, you would disagree with Lindsey Graham and what he said then. Here's what the senator
Yes,
from
I
South
would.
Carolina.
I totally
here's his quotes, Governor. One sophomoric response does not deserve another. Speaker Pelosi's threat to cancel the State of the Union is very irresponsible, blatantly political. President Trump denying Speaker Pelosi military travel to visit our troops in Afghanistan, our allies in Egypt and NATO is also inappropriate. Continue, Governor.
Well, I love Lindsey, but he's wrong. He's dead wrong about this for a couple of reasons. One, if you want to end the government shutdown, you cannot do it when the Speaker of the House, who has to call for a vote and who has to be involved in the negotiations, is gone for 7 days. That is going to absolutely prolong the shutdown. Lindsey is an institutionalist, and I understand that. Most legislators are. They want to defend their branch of government, and I get that. But this was not something that the troops overseas are dying to have. They can have that visit. They can take that wonderful excursion after they get the government back open. But it wasn't something that was pressing for them to do right now. And as the president said, if it's really this urgent for you, do what I do every day of the week. Get on a commercial flight. They go everywhere, including Afghanistan.
Okay. Ed Rollins writes this at foxnews.com. I'll just read you the headline, okay? If Trump thinks Pelosi will back down when he counterpunches, he's going to be very surprised. What do you think of that, and ultimately who makes rather the next move, Governor?
Well, I've watched both of them fight. They're both good fighters. They're both experienced at fighting, and they both kind of enjoy it. But I've never seen anyone like Donald Trump when it comes to a person who, once he gets in the fight, he does not go over to the corner, ever. This is a guy who just keeps punching until the other side is either pummeled or just is tired of the battle. So, you know, if you want to ask me who do I bet on, that's an easy one. I would bet with the president on this one. And it's not about who wins the fight. Quite frankly, I'm disgusted with the whole thing. I want him to get the government back open. I want them to end this really ridiculous fight. We've spent more money in the government shutdown than the president was asking for in the original $5.7 billion.
You're right about that. I thought Brexit was confounding.
It's ridiculous.
We'll see the way we get out of this one. Sir, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks.
Mike Huckabee, his reaction
You too,
on what's
Bill.
happening in D.C. Thanks.
It's day 31 of the partial shutdown, and President Trump is blasting Democrats for rejecting his proposal to reopen the government. The president offering up protections for DACA recipients in exchange for border wall funding. But Democrats are refusing to budge. Senator Chuck Schumer ramping up the rhetoric while slamming Trump's compromise.
If he opens up the government, we'll discuss whatever he offers, but hostage-taking should not work. The American people are overwhelmingly against it. The president's poll ratings are plummeting because even his own supporters agree that this is a bad tactic. And it's very hard to negotiate when a gun is held to your head.
Republicans could be ready to force the hand of Democrats. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he's going to bring up Trump's plan for a vote this week. And just a moment ago, well, 13 minutes ago, actually, President Trump tweeted about the wall again, and he said this: if Nancy Pelosi thinks that walls are immoral, why isn't she requesting that we take down all the existing walls between the U.S. and Mexico, even the new ones just built in San Diego, at their very strong urging? Let millions of unchecked strangers just flow into the United States. And that actually was a question that I wanted to ask, Greg, which is the Democrats have said that the wall is amoral.
Yes.
So if you're there, how do you then negotiate to like a border security.
I said this last week. I said,
how do you? That's a good point. I wanted to bring it up.
I said that they should actually remove the walls between Mexico and America. And it's, I think I said this last week. By the way, is it amoral or immoral?
Well, I think that. Well, you tell me. You're the editor.
It's immoral. We have a problem here. The more Trump negotiates with practical compromises, the more infantile and personal the Democrats seem to be taking this. But it shows the problem. They started at the wrong end. You should always begin with a multifaceted approach. The problem, the prison of two ideas. We keep saying you can only have one position, right? You're either for immigration or against immigration, and that is baloney. You can have a number of different positions on immigration. For example, I'm pro-immigration, and I'm pro-refugee with extreme vetting. I don't see how I think, refugees make great citizens because they're grateful. But you got to vet extreme vetting because you never know if there's going to be terrorists coming in, the old Skittle metaphor. But I'm living outside of this prison of two ideas. And we're now stuck in this thing where you have to be this or this, and it's killing the debate.
The other rhetorical excess I noticed this weekend is the Democrats saying that the president is taking hostages. And again, it's just like, wow, are we really talking about that? I mean, when we're talking about border security, the president has come off his position of like a whole wall across the whole thing, like that. But hostage taking, that takes it to a new extreme. Hard to negotiate with that.
Schumer said that we'll reopen the government and we can't even discuss border security until you do that. Well, the president offered Nancy Pelosi that. He said, you know what, if we reopen the government, can we do a deal on a barrier later on? And you know what she said? No. And then he said bye-bye, and that was the time he walked out of the room. Greg brings up the point, if you say you're for the wall, the Democrats have to say we're against the wall. Thus, every reporter should be asking that very question. Congresswoman, Senator, do you believe that we should tear down the existing walls since they are immoral and since they obviously don't work? You would have the government reopened right now if we had a fair media in this country, because they would be asking these logical questions to Democrats and not protecting the Democratic position, and the intensity would be so strong on Nancy, she would have to come to the negotiating table. So far, I believe she's lost this argument. If you look at her getting grounded on the flight, if you look at the Puerto Rican PR disaster, Trump is moderating his position. These logical arguments, they just can't argue with. All they say is, oh, it's mean. So if you look at what he's offering humanitarian assistance. He's offering changes to the asylum. He says only 280 additional walls to be needed and to be built. And what are they saying? No? And millions of people are still not getting paid? I don't think that's very compassionate.
Juan, the Democrats don't seem to think that they're losing.
They're not losing. I mean, it's, Jesse, if this was about the media, I don't think it's about the media. I think it's about the president and his stand and what he considers to be a political symbol that he can't afford to lose on. They would have gone back and said, hey, wait a minute, Mr. President, I thought Mitch McConnell, the Republicans in the Senate, joined in saying, let's keep the government open, let's keep people getting paid, let's keep our economy growing, and then let's negotiate. Initially, what did the president say? And then he said no because of pressure from the right-wing talk show host, or maybe the media, if they were fair, would say, Mr. President, you had a Republican majority for 2 years in the House and the Senate. Didn't seem to be a priority, did it? But here's the thing. He now goes after Nancy Pelosi as radical. Radical? What's radical here is the president has a weak negotiating hand, and I think it's starting to show. I think people were disappointed in what came Saturday. Everybody thought this was going to be a big announcement. He said he's going to do something big on Saturday afternoon.
You didn't like what he offered?
A dud.
You didn't like what he offered?
Why?
Voted for.
What don't you like about the offer?
My God, this is exactly what you would want.
No, absolutely not. He said, listen, let me just say, remember Jesse was saying to me last week, hey, Juan, if it's so easy, why don't you tell me what you want? Well, guess what? The president now is talking about, well, we could have more technology, we could have more border agents, we could have more judges. Yeah. He sounds like he's starting to negotiate on the Democrats' terms. But he doesn't say,
I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop this shutdown that's hurting our economy.
This is how you stop it, though. He basically said, originally he was just talking about a wall. And I said that was a mistake because he was only focused on the wall. That was the campaign promise, but he had to talk about other things. Now he comes to the table and he says, all right, we need these barriers, but I'm also going to provide the humanitarian aid. I'm also going to provide the Border Patrol agents.
But he's not getting off the wall.
He gave an extension.
Because you need the wall, Juan, to reduce illegal immigration.
You need the wall for him not to say that he lost and that he got trapped in
So what? In order to get Democrats to come on board, he would have to remove the wall. He would have to say, okay, I'm not interested in the steel barriers that the Border Patrol agents have asked for. He would have to remove the component that's the wall in order for the Democrats to get on board. That's because they want to deny him that talking point so that he made a campaign promise, and if he includes that border security measure in there, it's a campaign promise.
Let me say the promise he made was Mexico will pay. I don't see that at all.
Forget about that. Let's talk about
commercial break. I'll give you a point that would have been a better one for you to make.
Let's bring in co-host of The Five right here on Fox News, Juan Williams, and the national spokesperson of the Republican National Committee, Kayleigh McEnany. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks, Shannon.
Good to be with you.
Okay, so Lindsey Graham, he is generally a supporter of much of what the president does. They do break from time to time, but he said today, one sophomoric response does not deserve another. Speaker Pelosi's threat to cancel the State of the Union is very irresponsible and blatantly political. But he went on to say, Kayleigh, that, you know, kicking her off this Codell trip, that's inappropriate too.
You know, I have to agree with Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy here, who said, what does it take really to get Democrats to stay here in Washington? There's nothing more important than ending this shutdown than ensuring 800,000 federal workers get paid on Tuesday. If that means grounding the 7-day excursion, which also included a trip to Brussels, and keeping Nancy Pelosi here, then that's what it takes, because Nancy Pelosi had every interest in being in Hawaii. Democrats had every interest in being in Puerto Rico on the beach last week. We have to keep them here, and pulling them to the negotiating table to stand across from the president, secure our border, and end this shutdown is the priority.
All right, Juan, to that point, Senator Inhofe, obviously a Republican, he chairs the Senate Armed Services Committee, said this: I can see why he'd do it, talking about the president. She's the top leader of the House, and she's the top negotiator to open up the government. You can't open up the government from Afghanistan, so I think he has every right to do it. What's your response, Juan?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of spin from both sides, but the spin right now from the White House and the spin that you just read from Senator Inhofe strikes me as so hypocritical. President Trump, during this shutdown, Shannon, went overseas. He went to Iraq, I think it was, you know, and
as
to look at. Right, and so
after everyone had criticized him for not going to see the troops.
I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I mean, he was taking so much heat over not visiting the troops.
That's what I was saying. So if people had been pressing him to go, and he went right during the shutdown. Nobody said, hey, you can't leave Washington because you've shut down the government. And remember, it was Republicans who had passed a continuing resolution that he refused to sign that would have kept the government open. And tonight, as you were hearing from Ed Henry, there's the First Lady flying off again on a government-funded aircraft. We are in a moment where it's not only 800,000 people not being paid, but then you have the administration bringing back people at the State Department, bringing back people at IRS, dealing with the fact that we have long lines at airports, and our own Coast Guard now is struggling because they don't have the ability to stop some of these drug runners. This is what we should be dealing with, but instead we're dealing with boorish behavior, I think, by President Trump.
Okay, so let me play something from Senator Leahy, one of the most senior Democrats there over on the Hill. Here's what he says.
Forget petty games. Let's sit down and open the government up. There are real people suffering, real people in my state and everywhere else who aren't going to be able to pay the mortgage, pay their kids' schools, pay doctors. That's wrong.
Quick response from you both. Kayleigh, you first.
You know, first I would say, even within Nancy Pelosi's own caucus, Democrats are breaking from her. When you see Steny Hoyer saying, no, a wall's not immoral, yes, they're effective. Many others, Senator Merkley saying that, many others, both in the House and the Senate, saying, no, walls actually do work. They are breaking from Nancy Pelosi, who's catering to this radical Ocasio-Cortez, open borders, abolish ICE mentality. There's one mature person here, and it's President Trump. And Juan, to try to compare Nancy Pelosi, who was on a beach in Hawaii when President Trump visited the troops. President Trump skipped Christmas vacation, skipped New Year's, has not been to Mar-a-Lago. He has sat in the Oval Office, ready, willing, and able to negotiate, while Nancy Pelosi says, I'll give $1 to border security before going off to vacation. There's one responsible party here. It is President Trump.
All right, Juan, close us out.
I think she said $1 to a wall, because what you have here is a situation where now you have Gary Cohn, who's the president's former top economic advisor, saying he doesn't understand this shit, doesn't know where it's going, and it's damaging our economy for all Americans, in addition to denying people pay. And, of course, we talk about the 800,000 federal workers. We don't even talk about the contract employees who are also losing money. So it seems to me we have to just deal with the idea that the president's fixated on this wall as a political symbol, and you have people saying, you know what, if he gives it up, he's going to lose with his base. But I think we should do more than just play politics.
Well, people feel that
fentanyl are killing Americans.
We got to leave it there because people feel that way on both sides. It's interesting to know that polling shows that support for the wall is actually growing over the last few months. But we'll see where this game of chicken ends. In the meantime, Juan and Kaylee, thank you both.
Thanks,
You're
Shannon.
welcome, Shannon.